Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're going to try and untangle headless architecture versus microservices architecture. We got some great source material on this.
Yeah, definitely. They often get mentioned together, but they're fundamentally different approaches.
Exactly. So our mission really is to cut through some of that jargon, clarify what each one actually is, what their strengths are, and maybe when you'd pick one over the other.
A sort of express route to getting the core concepts.
Precisely. So let's start with the basics. Headless architecture. What are we actually looking at there? My understanding is like one backend, often a CMS or maybe e-commerce, just focused on the content or data.
That's right. It manages the content or product data, and then it serves that content up through APIs. Think RESTful APIs or GraphQL.
Okay, so it decouples the presentation layer, the website, the app.
Exactly. The front end. It completely separates how content is managed from how it's displayed. So you could have one backend feeding a website, a mobile app, maybe even a smart display.
Yeah, right. Makes sense. So then, microservices architecture. How does that compare? It sounds smaller, more distributed.
Yeah, think of it less like one big system and more like a collection of small independent services. Each one is built around a specific business capability.
Okay, so for example, in e-commerce, you might have one service just for handling the shopping cart.
Exactly. Or one for user accounts, one for inventory, one for payments. Each is a mini application, really.
And they're independent, like you can update one without breaking the others.
That's the goal. Independently deployable, independently scalable units. That's key.
Okay, so let's dig into those key differences then. Architecturally, we've got headless, one backend, many potential front ends, microservices.
Yeah.
Lots of small, independent back-end services working together.
Correct. And that basic structural difference leads to others. Take scalability.
How does that work differently?
Well, with headless, if your website gets hammered with traffic but your mobile app usage is normal, you can scale up the web front-end infrastructure specifically. The core back-end might not need scaling.
Okay, so you scale the delivery channel, and with microservices.
It's even more granular. Let's say it's Black Friday.
Yeah.
And your payment service is under massive load, but browsing is normal. You can scale just the payment microservice.
Ah, I see. So you only scale the specific function that needs it. That sounds efficient, but maybe more complex to manage overall.
It definitely can be. While headless can get tricky if you have loads of different front ends, microservices introduces its own complexity. Designing how all these independent services talk to each other reliably.
Right, the communication between them.
Yeah, and ensuring data stays consistent across services. That's inherently complex. Managing one system versus orchestrating dozens, potentially hundreds.
That makes sense. What about the service structure itself? Headless often uses an existing platform, maybe a bit monolithic in the back end.
Often, yeah. The back end handles content management, maybe commerce functions, is a more unified block. Microservices, by definition, breaks all that down. Each service handles only its specific task.
So the communication patterns must be different too. Headless is mostly front-end calling the back-end API, right?
Primarily, yes. Front-end requests data or triggers actions in the back-end via those APIs.
But microservices, they need to talk to each other a lot more.
Absolutely. That inter-service communication is vital. That they might use APIs to call each other directly or maybe asynchronous methods like message queues. It's a whole network of communication.
Interesting. And databases, I read Headless usually has one central database for the back-end.
Typically, yes. The main system manages its data centrally.
But microservices often goes for a database per service. What's the thinking there?
Flexibility and resilience mainly. Each service can choose the database technology that best suits its specific needs. And crucially, if one service's database goes down...
It doesn't take the whole application offline.
Exactly. It isolates faults. Much more resilient.
Okay, last big difference, deployment. How does that work?
With headless, you typically deploy the back-end system and its APIs as one unit, maybe separate from how you deploy the front ends.
Right, decoupling front-end and back-end deployment.
But with microservices, each individual service can be deployed completely independently, on its own schedule, using its own infrastructure if needed.
Wow, okay. So you could push an update to the inventory service multiple times a day without touching the payment service or the user interface.
Precisely. It really enables things like continuous delivery and faster iteration on specific features.
So summing it up, Headless is fundamentally about separating where content is managed from how it's presented. Flexibility in presentation.
Yeah, decoupling presentation. And microservices is about breaking down the application's functionality into independent, scalable pieces. Modularity and resilience in function.
Okay. So for anyone listening and trying to decide, maybe the key question is, what kind of flexibility or independence is most critical for your project? Is it about delivering the same content to many different kinds of screens and devices?
Or is it about needing to scale, update, and ensure the resilience of very specific business functions independently from each other?
Right. Thinking about that core need presentation flexibility versus functional modularity and scaling probably points you in the right direction.
Definitely a good starting point for figuring out which path makes more sense.
Great stuff. Thanks for diving deep with us today.